Hello and welcome to today's Office Hours presentation. This is Paul Hoyt, your host. Our Office Hours presentation is a relaxed, informal mentoring program for our tribe members that we do almost every Monday at noon Pacific time. All these recordings, slides, and exercises are archived in the members area of our website. The reasons we do the Office Hours is that we know that being a successful business owner can be a great experience, but we also know that it's tough. You need support to be successful, and we want you to get to know us, because when you get to know us, you will know that first and most importantly, we really do care about you. We want you to be successful in every area of your life, whatever that means to you. We want you to find the greatness, the happiness, the divinity within yourself, and then remember it, embrace it, and live it every single day. Our passion is helping entrepreneurs and small business owners get clear and stay focused so they can grow faster. And today we're going to support them with live group coaching. With live group coaching, there is no formal presentation. We just take your questions and discussion topics and do our best to support you with our insights and our experience. And you're welcome to ask questions along any of the key performance areas that I defined in my book in 2004 called The Foundation Factor. So you're welcome to ask questions and offer comments in any of these areas: leadership, marketing, sales, financial management, product development, operations and administration, and customer service. Just anything that you want to ask questions about. We also, with the Awaken CEO system, focus on business growth, professional growth, and personal growth simultaneously and at three different levels. The levels of the mindset, which is what you believe and the way you think about things and the opinions that you have about yourself and other people. Your methods, which is the processes and procedures and plans that you have for getting the job done. And we encourage you to focus on momentum. Momentum is getting into action and then having repeated action in the same focus, in the same manner, so that you build up momentum, much like a train can build up momentum as it goes down the railroad tracks. Today's agenda, as we said, was just on live group coaching. We're going to do a reminder quickly of the last several office hours. Then we're going to go into open Q&A and coaching, and then I'm going to have a special offer for you at the end of the program. The previous office hours, and we've done quite a few since we had the last pure group coaching call. In fact, I don't think we've had one even since the first of the year or so. In office hours 148, we talked about leadership. There was coaching along with that, but we reminded people about what the great principles and best practices are in the area of leadership. In 149, we talked about marketing. And again, we had live group coaching after we talked about best practices and principles in marketing. In 150, we talked about the cheerfully imperfect leader and how important it is for every leader to embrace their own imperfections and see themselves as having opportunity for growth and being a role model for somebody who is self-observant and self-aware and humble and vulnerable and shares that opinion and becomes a role model for that with their entire team. In 151, we talked about money. We talked about best practices in financial management and then went into live group coaching again. And in 152, we talked about accountability and other leadership virtues, where we encouraged everyone to be accountable and responsible and to take their opportunity they have and the responsibility they have of being a great role model for people in their business, very, very seriously. Not seriously in the sense of brooding about it and being negative about it and stepping into the shadows about it, but serious in the sense of focusing on it and realizing what an incredible opportunity it is and what an incredible responsibility it is to be a virtuous leader. And in the last one we did was 153. We talked about the special challenges of micro businesses and how they have challenges that even larger businesses do not have. And I don't know if I ever said this directly, but I think that having a micro business with 2 or 3 or 4 people in it is a lot harder than having a business with 20 people or 40 people or 60 people in it, because of the inability that we have to specialize. Large companies have people specialized in marketing and specialized in sales and specialized in financial management. But smaller companies, especially those solopreneurs or those partnerships between 1 or 2 or 3 people, they don't have the opportunity to specialize, and the job gets a lot harder. But today we're going to talk about we're going to talk about anything that you want to talk about in our live group coaching. And I'm just going to leave this up there for a little bit to kind of trigger your thoughts and trigger your memories. If you're attending this online, feel free to go ahead and say hello and type something into the chat log. And we'll be happy to even take you off of mute and have a conversation with you. And if you're listening online or just listening to the broadcast via cell phone or via phone in some way, you're welcome to send me a text at 415-997-8001, and we'll do our best to answer your question or to discuss the topic that's of most interest to you. And with that, let's jump in and begin talking about those topics. And one of them, the first thing I wanted to do was talk a little bit about the Oscars last night. So today is Monday, February 27th. Yesterday on the 26th, they held the annual Academy Awards presentations. And at the end of it, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, there was one serious giant flub. They handed to the presenters, Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, the wrong envelope. And when they got out to announce the Best Picture award, they announced the wrong award. It was a series of mistakes, which I immediately thought of, what can we do to stop that kind of a mistake happening again? And that's a classic example about how we become aware of the need to improve our business processes. And we take a look at a mistake that's been made, understand and analyze how the mistake was made, and then adjust our internal systems and processes to ensure, or at least take a long step towards ensuring that such a mistake never happens again. So again, what happened was Warren Beatty was handed the wrong envelope when he went onto stage. He didn't, I know he's presented at the Oscars many times before, and when he pulled the card out of the envelope and it said Emma Stone, Best Actress, he looked confused. We thought that he was trying to look funny. He was intending to show the card to Faye Dunaway, and she thought he meant for her to announce the winner, and she just jumped on it and said La La Land. So there was a series of mistakes. The first and the biggest mistake was why did they hand him the wrong envelope in the first place? So what do we do, in our businesses when there is an opportunity to improve the system like that? So I'm going to give you some suggestions. And what comes to mind is a pre-flight checklist. I don't know if you've ever been as a pilot of a plane or sat in the pilot's chair, or certainly we've all seen movies of people going through pre-flight checklists, but there's some features there that we could use at the Oscars the next time around. So first of all, there's a check. The pilot says flaps and the co-pilot says flaps check, and there is a verbal response required and a check and the balance required. So those two things would have gone a long way to helping at the Oscars. So here's my advice to the people at PricewaterhouseCoopers for improving that process the next time. One person takes the envelope and hands it to person number two, their partner backstage, whose sole purpose is to make sure that no mistakes are made. Person number one hands the envelope and says, Best Picture. And the second person takes the envelope, reads the envelope, and says Best Picture out loud, verbally, so that there is a confirmation. They take it and hand it to the presenter and say again, Best Picture. The presenter takes a look at it, reads the envelope, looks him in the eye, and says Best Picture. That's a three-way check. Person number one's checking it, person number two's checking it, and the presenter's checking it. I guarantee you, if they would put that process into place, there would never be another mistake with envelopes at the Oscars or any other awards ceremony like that. And maybe they'll do that this time. I don't know what they did the last time, but it certainly wasn't that kind of procedure that was really designed from the outset to prevent any slips like the one that happened last night. And speaking of that slip last night, I got to give a big shout out to Jordan Horowitz, who is the first one to speak for La La Land when they thought that they had won the award. Jordan did a magnificent job of saying, wait a minute, there's been a mistake. We didn't win. Moonlight won Best Picture. No joke. and he took the card out of the real envelope and showed it up to the camera. He did a marvelous job. I was really very impressed by him and other people from La La Land who graciously, handed their Oscars over to the people who had really won it. I was just flat impressed. And I'm going to give a shout out to Jordan Horowitz because he really demonstrated a tremendous leadership virtue there. He immediately saw the mistake. He corrected the mistake. He took positive, forceful action in a very graceful and vulnerable way. He congratulated the people who really won, even though I know that, they wanted to win. Of course, everybody wants to win. And while they were people who were walking off stage and the executive, the production assistants were coming on the stage and taking Oscars out of people's hands, in front of millions of people who were watching, and they were all pretty darn gracious about the whole thing. So I want to give a shout out to the people from La La Land and the graciousness with which they accepted the error, and Warren Beatty and the graciousness with which he accepted the error, and they corrected the error, although it wasn't nearly as quick as PwC, that's PricewaterhouseCoopers, said that it was in their 3 a.m. tweet. It was graciously and gracefully handled as much as it could have been. My shout out to Jordan Horowitz, who was the executive producer of La La Land, who was the one who really came forth and said, hey, there's been a mistake, and graciously turned the Oscars over. So that's one of the things I want to talk about. And for you who are listening to the call and or the recording, think about the incredibly essential aspects of your business, the things which really can't go wrong. And think about the checklist and the power of a verbal response whenever, by a second party, whenever you have a checklist that really needs to be followed well, because that can be extremely valuable. So much like you don't want to ever try to take off an airplane without the flaps being down, you don't ever want to try to announce a winner at an awards ceremony without having the correct envelope in your hand. And for you folks, decide what kind of a checklist that you have. By the way, I've got a checklist when it comes to doing these office hours presentations. It has to do with putting the phones on Do Not Disturb. It has to do with, turning the ringer off on my cell phone. It has to do with checking to make sure that people can hear me well, etc. So anytime that you need to, do your own pre-flight checklist to ensure that there are no errors, in your process when it's critical. So with that, I'm going to move on to question number 2 here, or topic number 2 that I have, and it's kind of related to what we talked about with the awards ceremony last night, and that is, what's my number 1 tip for entrepreneurs? I had somebody ask me this question last week, and I had to think about it for a little bit, because I don't just have, of course, 1 tip for entrepreneurs. I have dozens of tips, and maybe even hundreds of tips for entrepreneurs. The Awaken CEO Foundations course is 39 best practices in business, and every single one of them, is a tip. So, but I'm going to attempt to answer it as I did last week, for my client. The number 1 tip that I would encourage you to think of, that is that there's always a way to improve. There's always a higher vibration. There's always an opportunity to learn from things that are going right and to learn from things that are going wrong. There's always the opportunity to learn and to grow, to be a stronger person today than you were yesterday, so that you can focus day after day after day on learning things and gaining knowledge and gaining experience and gaining wisdom and gaining personal strength, so that a year from now that you're a much stronger, wiser, more knowledgeable, more capable person who has even more value to share with the people that they work with. So that's number 1 tip, is always be focusing on ways in which you personally can improve and in ways in which your company can improve. And if you're looking around and you can't find ways for your self-improvement, then I suggest you get a coach, because coaches will help you find those ways. But you can certainly help other people improve in the ways that they're doing in a kind and gracious and vulnerable and open way. I really appreciate leaders who let people know that, I'm working on myself and I'm asking you to do the same thing. I'm improving the way that I do business and I'm asking you to do the same thing. It's a very collaborative approach to learning and growing, and I always respect people who take that kind of collaborative approach. So that's the number one approach, number one tip that I would have for anybody who is an entrepreneur. Look for the ways to improve, look for the silver lining on every cloud, look for the learning opportunity in every challenge or mistake that comes your way so that you can step into your power. And I'm guessing that's really step number 2, is that we all have this incredible greatness and power within us. And I don't think there's ever a single person who has completely, fully stepped into their power. I know there's some great, powerful people out there. Tony Robbins makes millions of dollars by being the most confident man on the planet. That's his line, not mine. Brendan Burchard has stepped into an awesome amount of power. My favorite person who has really, really stepped into their power is Byron Katie, who invented a process, a personal growth process called The Work, and she talks about, how she loves everything, how she focuses every day on loving whatever happens. Loving what is what she calls it, and that's the name of her book. And that's her focus from the moment she wakes up to the time that she goes to bed. It's loving whatever comes my way. And whether I planned on it or not, whether it turned out the way I expected it to or wanted it to or not, that we love everything that comes our way. And therefore, when we love everything that comes our way, we spend our days and the rest of our lives, in a state of grace, in a state of loving other people. So there's always a way to step into your power greater than you're doing it today, to step into more wisdom, to step into more love, to step into more peace and knowledge and the success that can come with that. And a close third to that, the first one being there's always a chance to improve. The second one being that you have more power than you think that you have, and you haven't fully stepped into your power because you're still alive. And I guess tip number 3 would be to follow your heart. To find that passion, to really be honest with yourself about the things that you really love to do. Because when you are pursuing the things that you really love to do, your power will follow your passion. First comes your passion, and then comes your power, and then comes your profitability and your performance and your success in business. So if you remember those things, I know it's 3 tips instead of just 1, but if you remember those things, always looking for improvement, always looking to step into a greater power, and always following your passion, you're going to be a lot better off in business. I see that we've had a couple other people join us on the call today, so I want to welcome them to the call. Welcome Darlene, and welcome Ricardo. Welcome Marcel to the call too. It's always great to have you on the call today. If you have any questions or discussion topics or things to offer, please type them into the chat log, and I will take a look at them as quickly as I can, and we will we'll do our best to answer your questions. And here's one I think coming up right now. It was just a thank you from Ricardo. It's good to hear you. And by the way, give me a call or an email sometime and let me know how you're doing, because it's been a couple of weeks or maybe in a couple of months since we last chatted. So that would be great. And I'm going to take another question that came in from a client last week and answer it for you in the same way that I answered it for them. The question came in that says, I just don't have enough time for sales. What can I do about that? I just don't have enough time to do what it is that I know that I should do. And by the way, there's a lot of variations on that question. I don't have enough time to do marketing. I don't have enough time to clean my office. I don't have enough time to send emails or write thank you notes to people. I don't have enough time for this. I don't have enough time for that. I don't have enough time for something else. And there's really 2 ways to answer that question. First way to do it, is there a way that you can make that which you don't have enough time for less of a burden? If you really can't do it yourself because it takes too much time, you've got a couple of choices. You can lower the task or reduce the task in some way find a way, for example, if you're getting 1,000 emails today, find a way to cut it down to only 200 emails a day so you can deal with it. Second opportunity is to get a partner on the team or hire somebody else temporarily or full-time to do the task that you don't have the time to do. And the third thing is to really take control over your schedule and use a time allocation model so that you have the time allocated to do the things that you know are necessary to do. When I give programs on productivity, and I've done a few of them over the years, one of my biggest tips to help you be more productive and more effective in the business is to cultivate the talent of making and keeping great appointments with yourself. So back to the question on sales. If you say that you don't have enough time for sales and you know that you really need to spend a lot more time on sales, then allocate the time to work on sales first. Allocate 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning, say every morning, to doing nothing but sales. Put it on your calendar and it becomes your sales time. It becomes your shark time. It becomes your time to go out and find new business. And if you'll honor yourself and honor the appointment that you have made with yourself in the same way that you would honor an appointment that you made with somebody else, then you're going to be far better off. You can take control of your own schedule. You do have control over that, by the way. As a CEO, as an entrepreneur, you are the one who gets to set your own schedule, and you can and should, I rarely use the word should, but I'm going to use it in this case, you can and should take responsibility for managing your own schedule and stepping into your powerful warrior energy that says that I can do this. I know that I've got time in my day to do the things that I need to do, and I'm going to do this by setting an appointment with myself and keeping that appointment with myself. And that's the key, is don't see yourself as a victim. Don't see yourself as being trapped in any way. See yourself as being a warrior who is fully competent and fully capable of managing your own schedule and managing your own agenda. So, if the millionaire next door or the billionaire who just lives a few blocks over said, Paul said, or called up Marcel and says, Marcel, I'd like to have an appointment with you. And believe me, I know Marcel enough to where she'd say, great, let's make that happen. And at the appointed time, she would be on that call or she would be in that meeting because there's so much opportunity in that meeting. The opportunity for reward is incredible. And I know that she would absolutely be there at her best, showing up, to take advantage of that opportunity. Whenever you set an appointment with yourself, it is an opportunity in the same way. It's an opportunity to have a conversation with and to do work for your own higher self, your own future self, your own best interest, your own family, those people who are very, very important to you. And I encourage you to think about your own best self as being somebody who is very, very important for you. Show up for that person, the person that you are going to be, in the same way that you would show up for the billionaire who lives just a few blocks away. I think that's a really, really good attitude, and hopefully that will be helpful to you. Here's another question that came up from a client last week, and that was, people just won't pay me what they owe me. What should I do about that? If somebody owes you money, especially if they acknowledge that they owe you money, but they're just not paying you either at all or as quickly as you would like for them to, what do you do about that? And I'm going to answer that question, as I do most questions, in a couple of different ways. One of them is, what do we do about it right now? And that is, collection calls. It's your opportunity to pick up the phone and call them, to send them an email, to do everything you can to communicate with them and encourage them to step into their power and get right with you and step into their integrity. At first I think we do that with a cheerful, light heart, and then perhaps with a little more focused and intensity to the messages that we have about encouraging people, that it really is, by the way, something that you do for them. Because when somebody just totally bails out on an obligation that they've made, they're stepping into their own victim energy and their own prisoner energy instead of being a fully empowered business professional. They are being somewhat less than that. So we are encouraging them to step into their own power and make good on this obligation and get this out from underneath them so that they can feel better about themselves and move into greater success through having greater power. So there is an art and a science to collection calls, and at some point in time, you may turn it over to a collection agency. If you have a contract with them and they have a signed contract, you can even sue them in a small claims court, or if it's large enough, in another venue if they're not paying their bills. But there's always some expense involved with that, and time and hassle from an emotional point of view too. But if somebody owes you several $1,000s and you have a written contract, I don't know where it is where you are, but usually the contract specifies where the jurisdiction is. And in many cases, even if it doesn't call out a jurisdiction, if you have a signed contract with somebody, you can sue them in your local county, in your local court system. So there are lots of different options for reminding them of the obligation, for requesting for a payment, for inviting them to step back into their integrity, and then, using a third party or even the court system in order to collect on that debt. But that's really only, a part of what I wanted to say. The other part of it is changing your internal processes and procedures so you don't get in that position anymore, to make sure that you update your agreements and you go over your agreements whenever you have an engagement just starting with somebody else, to make sure that you're receiving a down payment and progress payments along the road, so that if you get upside down with somebody, that it's not completely upside down. At least you got half your money, or at least you got 2/3 of your money, and it's just that final payment that wasn't received after you made the final deliverable on your engagement. Another tip would be just don't get too far engaged with people who are not paying you. You have to have a credit limit for customers, and your credit limit might be $200, it might be $500, it might be $1,000, but draw that line in the sand. And once a person gets over that, you just don't provide any more products or services to them until they get right with you in some way. So those are the big three. Number one is do the collection stuff. Number two is have great agreements with them and go over those agreements with them, and make sure that you are getting progress payments and down payments along the way. And the third one was to, what was the third one? The third one was to have credit limits on everybody. So those are the ways that we prevent the problem from happening in the future, and the ways that we deal with the problem when it exists today. And hopefully that was helpful to you. I'm going to take just a quick time out and talk to you about a special program that I have going, and then we're going to jump back into the open questions and answers. Our next office hours is going to be on March 6th. That's 1 week from today. I haven't figured out what the topic is. If you would like for me to talk on any particular topic or have any suggestions for me, I would appreciate that. Just go to paulsurvey.com and fill it out, or send me an email and let me know, or send me a text and reach out to me in any way, and we'll take a look at that. And we are still having our offer on the No BS Business Growth Package. The No BS Business Growth Package is 5 different 90-minute consulting sessions: the Business Clarity Questionnaire, the Phased Growth Strategy, the Business Foundation Profile, and the 90-Day Plan. Actually, it's 4 sessions on the 90-day plan. With the No BS package, carries the list price of $1,500, but that's not the price that you're going to pay. It comes with a 100% money-back guarantee. If you don't want to continue after the first session, just let us know. We'll give you all your money back, and you get a complete refund. And if you get through the entire program and you don't agree that it was worth every penny, then you get to set the price. You get to tell us how much it was worth for you, and we'll make it right with you, because that's just the way that I like to do business with people. So call to schedule your free strategy session to learn about whatever discounts and bonuses may be available for you today. And right now, today, by the way, I have a lot of openings in my schedule. So give me a call and let me know what works for you, and we'll schedule some time, and we'll do whatever we can to help you get clear and stay focused so that you can grow faster. And with that, we're going to jump back into open questions and answers and any other discussion topics. Again, for those people who are on the line or who are joining me live online, be sure to type things into the chat log, raise your hand, and I will we'll talk to you and discuss the things that you want to discuss and answer any questions that you may have. Next question that came up for me last week was the question of how long do I work with a prospect before I give up on that prospect, being a good prospect for me, and I move on in some way. And I'm going to answer that in a couple of different ways. When I was selling professional services for a company named EDS, which has since been purchased by Hewlett-Packard and is part of their consulting organization now, I put in a rule of effect called the 3-call rule. And the 3-call rule was this: if I called a person 3 times and they did not respond, I took it as their way of saying no, that they really didn't want to engage at this time. And because that was a transactional related business as opposed to a relationship oriented business, that worked pretty well for me. There were lots of people that I could talk to. And if I was going to call you 3 times and you weren't going to give me the courtesy of a call back, then I was just going to assume that you were confrontation averse, that you had not stepped into your power enough to say even, hey, Paul, I don't have an opportunity for you at this time. I wish you the best of luck. Do that in a very positive and cheerful way, which I always appreciated, by the way. And by the way, most salespeople do. When you just say, no, not right now, it's not good for me, call me back in 6 months, or I'll let you know whenever a good time for call me back is. They do appreciate that because we do want to move on to other opportunities and invest our time and our emotional energy in things which may pay off for us and our company. So that's opinion and perspective number 1, is that we put forth a reasonable amount of effort, and if we're not getting a response back and we're not able to engage in some way, that we decide that we're going to move on and do something else. One of my favorite sales trainers, Eric Lofholm, has a particular policy that he recommends called keep calling until they either buy or die, which means that, that we're going to keep after them and keep after them and keep after them. And that too can be a very, very valuable perspective if the reward is enough, and especially if you're continuing to engage with them in some way and the prospect is moving, albeit somewhat slowly, through the sales process, that we keep developing the opportunity and it keeps looking like the opportunity is there. It's always a judgment call, but you never know when somebody you've been working with for a year or 2 years or 5 years or even 10 years is going to come up with something that you can really help them with. And if you really like them and you want to support them and you want to work with them, maybe the right thing to do for you and for them is to continue working with them on a very long way. I had an opportunity to do that just this last week. I was in San Diego to visit a gentleman that I've been working with for 10 years. When I started working with him, he'd been working with his business idea and opportunity for 23 years. So right now he's been working with it for 33 years. And the really good news is it's just about ready to come to market. And I really like it. He's done a phenomenal job, because he's a bright fellow and because he's been working at it for such a long time. It's about ready to get out of alpha tests and go into beta tests. And then it could be rolled out to a general market, to a larger market, within about 60 days or so. So after working on it for 33 years, he's ready to launch it probably in the next 60 days. I've been nurturing the opportunity and working with him as a client and a former client now for 10 years. And I think the thing is actually going to work. It doesn't work all the time, but I chose to continue working with him because there was value in that conversation and value in that relationship. And now I think it's going to pay off for the both of us. So I'm very, very excited about that. Sometimes working with prospects for a very long period of time, nurturing the relationship, keeping in touch with them, checking in every month, checking in every couple of weeks for a long, long time feels like the right thing to do, and it will pay off. Sometimes it feels like the right thing to do to, follow the 3-call rule and say that, if they're not responding to me in some way after 3 calls, then I'm gonna take it that they are confrontation averse, that they really don't want to tell me no, and the way that they're telling me no is through the passive aggressive activity of not returning the phone call. You get to choose. You're the CEO, you're the entrepreneur, you're the only one who can really answer the questions about, is this worth pursuing? Am I enjoying the pursuit? Do I see that the possibility of reward to be large enough in order for it to justify this type of additional investment in this opportunity? That I'm going to continue to invest an hour a month or 30 minutes a month in pursuing this for heck as long as it takes, because the possibility of reward is so tremendous out there. So you get to choose, and I encourage you to choose wisely on whether or not it's time to close the door and move on, or whether it's time to keep the door open and keep the relationship active so that it might pay off in the long run. That is always a tough thing to do. And if you want to chat about that further, you're welcome to give me a call and do that. Here's another situation that came up. Let me take a sip here real quick. Here's another situation that came up with a client just last week. And the situation was, I've been working with my business partner for the last 5 years, but I think that it's time to move on. And how can I do that? What should I really do about that? Well, and my advice to them is, number one, have you really talked it through with them? Do they really understand the issues? Have you done, a compassionate communication with them where we talk about the facts and your feelings and what you really need and have a request with them? Have you done the UCD method that says, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this, I'm concerned about that, and here's what I'd really like for you to do? Have you had that conversation with them? Because when you've got that much time invested in a relationship, about the last thing that you want to do is walk away from the relationship without giving that person credit, without extending them the encouragement and the kindness of giving them the opportunity to make the relationship better, because they've got time and money invested in it too. So if you have had those conversations with them that says that, hey, this just isn't working out, this isn't what I've expected, it never the relationship never has been realized, or the performance just hasn't been there in some way, that once you had that conversation with them, then you can reach out and take the action. And the action that you take, I really would encourage you to do that with kindness and with a consideration for the other person. When somebody's working on our team and we let them go, there's always, the 2 weeks severance, that 2 weeks notice that we ask them to give to us, and typically some sort of a severance package that we give to them. And that severance package can just be 2 weeks of pay. It can be 1 week for every year of service that they have provided, which is a fairly common thing that I see larger companies do. It can be, a golden parachute. It can be a bonus that says that, we're moving in a different direction, but we want to honor and reward you for your contributions so far. It can be specified with some sort of a buyout clause if in fact they are a legal partner in the business. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but I encourage you to do it with integrity and with a consideration and with respect and with kindness, but do it. Don't be trapped. Don't be thinking that, oh, woe is me, I'm a victim here and there's nothing I can do about it. Or, oh, woe is me, I'm a prisoner here, I'm trapped in this circumstance and there's nothing I can do about it, because nothing is further from the truth. You can make the decisions that you need to make to step into your power and to do the right things for your business by managing that departure with consideration, respect, and kindness and integrity, and moving forward in your business with the new people, whoever and however you choose to do that. One of the last things I would like to say about that is that we always, speak of other people in a kind way. unless that person has, embezzled $300,000 from your business, or, unless they have really, really done you wrong in terms of criminal activities, then we still speak well of them. We don't go disparage other people. We don't limit their opportunity to be successful with other people by passing along gossip and by by dwelling on the bad things that they did to try to justify our decision. We wish them well. We speak well of them. We encourage them. We really honestly hope that wherever they go, that this door closing means that another door is going to open for them, and they will have greater success, working with other people than they had working with us. And that when you do that with that attitude in your heart and with that professionalism, you're going to find that you're not going to burn those bridges, and that people will speak well of you because you are speaking well of them. And who knows, in a year or 2 or 3 or whenever, you might get back together and decide to do business again whenever you both see the opportunity to provide value to each other and support each other in meeting your long-term goals by doing that. So I encourage you to do that. And again, those people who are on the call, I do encourage you to, type in a discussion topic or ask a question in the chat log, and I will get right to it because I just have a couple of questions left. The next one is, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, I don't understand them. How do I leverage the power of social media? I appreciate your kindness by asking me that question, but I'm probably not the right person to ask that question to, because I'm not really good at leveraging social media. There are some things that I've been doing well on social media for a long time, and some things that I have not been doing well on social media at all. Fortunately, that I know social media consultants and people who can help you with that. One of them is on the call today. I worked with her for a long time. Her name is Marcelle Allen. Marcelle has a company called Dreamosity, and I long respect her social media expertise. The key is, if you don't have the expertise, whether it be social media or sales or financial management or whatever it is, don't just sit back and say, oh, woe is me, I don't have this expertise, what should I do? Go find the expertise. Talk to people that you know and ask them of, who are you working with? I need some support in this way. And let them make referrals and recommendations to you, because there's no reason to sit back and bemoan the fact that you don't have the expertise when there are so many wonderful professionals out there who do have the expertise and that you can engage with, and you can get the services that you need, the training that you need, the support that you need in order to bring that competency into your business. So, make that happen. I don't really know how you can leverage the power of social media other than, leverage the power you have to pick up the phone and find somebody who can help you with that, because it can be a really, really wonderful thing. I'm going to move on to the next question here, and it's a question by one of the callers that we have, AJ. AJ is on the call, a person, again, I've been working with for many, many years, who has a really great heart and is a great person, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity to work with him for a long time. His question is, what needs to go into an electronic press kit? And I'm not sure whether or not I can answer that very well off the top of my head. I know I have an electronic press kit. If you go on to paulhoyt.com and hit the About page and then go into the Media Kit page, you're going to see, a lot of things in there. There is, a page with a picture. I've got LinkedIn profiles, Facebook profiles, Twitter profiles, all of the links that are in there for that. You have the opportunity to download a CV of mine and get a press kit that way, and probably a brochure or a flyer or two. But I don't, and I think I would call that at least it's a digital press kit. I don't know that I would say electronic press kit, but it is, everything that you ever wanted to know about who I am and what I do, on that About Us page. Another form of a digital press kit, are things like these office hours presentations, or the YouTube videos that you can record for yourself and put up there so people can find them on the net. And that becomes a part of your digital press kit. whenever you've done speeches, especially live speeches in front of public audiences, you can get, recordings of that. In the case of AJ, I know he's in the arts community, so recordings of performances that you have done or your partners have done can form the digital press kit that you have. But I guess it depends on what type of business that you're in. If it's a coach or a consultant, you want to have articles and things that you have written that people can download to get familiar with who you are and what you do. If you're a speaker, you definitely need a speaker's introduction as part of your press kit so people can see what you look like, sound like, act like on stage, and the power of your presentation ability. If you're an artist, you want to have copies of the recordings of your performances on stage, etc. So it really depends a little bit on who you are and what you're doing and your marketplace and what you see other people having in their digital press kit. So maybe that's another good brainstorm, is to go to find people who you respect and who you want to be seen as being as competent as. That was a terrible sentence. But when you find somebody who you consider to be very professional and you want to say, I want to look like that person, go look at their digital press kit, their electronic press kit, and find out what they have in theirs and copy it. If they've got a brochure, you can use a brochure. If they've got a CV, you use a CV. If they've got their LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter profiles online and links to their website, you put them on. So we do our market research by looking at what other successful people are doing, and we copy that as much as possible and duplicate their success for ourselves. Hopefully that was helpful to you. And you are very welcome. You are very, very welcome. I got 12:49. We got time for just a couple of more questions. I just got one more question or one more discussion topic for you. So if you have another question, I invite you to type that into the chat log, or you can text me at 415-997-8001, and I'll take a look at your text and we'll answer it that way if you happen to just be listening live in via the telephone. So the last question that I have on my dance card today is, what is your number one tip when it comes to working with partners? There's a difference in between working with a partner in your business and having a contractor in your business or an employee at your business. And my number one tip for working with partners is understand what that partner wants to accomplish long term. The analogy I like to use is, if you're a rocket ship and your partner's a rocket ship, before you tie a rope around both rocket ships and have them take off, you want to make sure that they're on the same course so that they don't just fly apart after just a few weeks or a couple of months, because they have different long-term goals and initiatives and objectives in mind. So, and by the way, if you do have different long-term objectives, one of them wants to move to Montana and one of them wants to stay in California, or one of them wants to have a $20 million business and the other one just wants a $1 million a year lifestyle business, that's okay. But you're upfront about that. You talk about what your long-term goals are and decide whether that this is a partnership for 90 days or this is a partnership for 90 years. Who knows, but it all depends on what that long-term direction is. So that's tip number one, is make sure that you understand how you can contribute to your partner's long-term and short-term success, and make sure that they understand how they can contribute to your long-term and short-term success. Then you'll know under what framework to construct the partnership. And when you construct the partnership, my number two tip then is to make sure that it is win-win and skin-skin. We all know about win-win relationships. That means that as we work together, you win and I win. But the important part of that is the skin-skin, is that you've got some skin in the game and I've got some skin in the game, that you have an investment of time and money and I've got an investment in time and money, and we need for that investment to pay off in order for us to feel successful and in order for us to get the benefits and the rewards out of that partnership. So focus on long-term and short-term success so that you know whether this is a 90-day or a 90-year partnership, and focus on the win-win for each party, so that you really know how this other partner is going to win. They're going to win by getting their share of the revenues or profits. They're going to win by getting their share of the of the proceeds of that partnership, whatever they look like. Like, if your partnership is to collect leads, then they get their share of the leads and you get your share of the leads. It's not actually generating cash money yet, but they get to reap the rewards of their investment in the same way that you do, and make sure that they've got some time invested in it as well. Because when somebody doesn't have time and doesn't have money invested in a relationship, it's easy for them to walk away from the relationship, and you don't want to have that happen. You want them to stay in a relationship with you so that you can get the rewards out of that relationship, and so that they can see the rewards in that relationship too, so that it turns into be one of those profitable, long-term, glorious partnerships where you've worked together for each other's mutual support, where you worked for their success and they worked for your success, and you worked together for your mutual success, and it turned out to be well. With that, that's the last question that I had for today. For those of you who are joining us online, I'll give you one last opportunity to type in a question or a discussion topic, and I will address it and take a look at it. As I remind you all that we do have the No BS Business Growth Package on special, and that special today is call me. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out if this is something that can really help you get clear and stay focused so that you can grow faster, because I like nothing more than helping people do exactly that, of doing what I can to leverage the experience and the talent that I've gained over the years to your advantage so that you can win and so you can build the business of your dreams. And with that, I think we're going to call it a day for today, and I'll sign off until next week when we'll talk again. And until we meet again, this is Paul Hoyt wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Bye-bye.